So here we are then, it's team preview number 20. It is time for the last team preview of our 2021 Overwatch League season just before it gets kicked off this weekend. And this means it's time for the Washington Justice. It's our final look at the West region, quite obviously, and this is an interesting one because Washington Justice are a very different team to what they were previously. And this is a Washington Justice team for the first time ever that looks like it has an incredible amount of potential. And we've never been able to say that about a Washington Justice team on that scale before. So it's going to be very interesting to see quite how well this Justice team can do in 2021, because we are going to start off with a little bit of history, as we always do. 2 seasons on the board for Washington Justice since they came in as the second batch of teams in 2019. It's never been a good look for the Justice. It was a 8-20 record in their first season that saw them finish joint 17th with Toronto Defiant, and last year it was a 4-17 record, which saw them finish 19th behind the Vancouver Titans. So that's not an impressive look. However, Washington Justice, they got a little bit of luck at the end of last season. They, because of all the circumstances surrounding COVID-19, they were able to make a run in the playoffs. They got very, very far after the signing Decay, and they didn't quite make it to the grand finals, but they were very, very close. So Justice are on a upwards trajectory, and it is shown that in their roster movements for the 2021 season, because there have been a lot. So let's talk about the ones going out first of all. So Elivo, we already knew went out just before the season ended, but Lulshish has gone. Lulshish had a lot of visa issues. Never actually played for the Washington Justice. It's a real shame not to see Lulshish and Elivo together in the Overwatch League. That pairing has now been split up. Lulshish goes over to Young and Beautiful, which he's doing pretty well at. Raw, he's out, the incumbent main tank of the Washington Justice. I can't say that's a bad thing, let's be honest, and I think we can all agree that the Washington Justice have upgraded quite a lot. So that's a pretty interesting move. He's out, and then we see Arc out as well. He's retired. Stitch leaves the Washington Justice, no longer on a team. Neither is Janu, which is 2 big losses when you think about it. Stitch and Janu were 2 very big players in the Overwatch League at the time when they joined the Justice after leaving the Vancouver Titans, ex-Runaway obviously, and then Aingod also leaves the Washington Justice. So there's a lot of talent being shipped out of the Washington Justice, especially when you look at Stitch and Janu, and even Aingod in some respects as well. There's a lot of really good talent leaving, and the question is, could the Washington Justice follow this up with good talent to replace it? Well, they certainly can. So, the 2 retainees are Tuba, the flex DPS player, because, well, Tuba really stepped up at the end of last season. I think we can all agree with that. So we've got no problem with him staying on the roster, and then of course they are going to retain Decay. Decay was a staple of their end of season push, without a doubt. He was on the Zarya mostly. We know Decay has just the nastiest of Zaryas, but he's also a fantastic hit scan. And so it's obvious the Washington Justice are going to want to retain him above anyone else that they had on a previous roster. And they've done exactly that, which is giving them a person to work around. I could see Decay becoming like the Washington Justice version of Carpe. I think that's a good way to describe it in terms of the way he works in the team. Like the team works around Decay, just like the Philadelphia Fusion work around Carpe. Whether that's a good thing or not. But let's go and talk about the introductions for this year of the Washington Justice, their new look, and we start off with the main tank, because the main tank is someone we've wanted to see in the Overwatch League for so long, and it's finally time. It is Mag, coming in from Runaway. He is 18 years old, and now he can finally get a shot at the Overwatch League. Mag has been one of the top tier main tank players in Korea since he was promoted to Runaway after they had to change their roster. Obviously, Runaway have had a lot of players nicked over the years. But Mag, he is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And you've just got to look at his record. It's firsts and seconds pretty much across the board. It's just Runaway things. He's always there and thereabouts at the top of Korea, going back 3 years now, and he's just an incredible main tank. Really, really good main tank. One of the hottest prospects in terms of, well, probably across the league, not just in terms of tank play, but across the league, he's one of the hottest prospects coming into this Overwatch League season. And he's incredibly flexible as well on the main tank role. Mag is going to be one to watch big time for the Washington Justice. I did not expect them to be able to get Mag. I thought Mag would go to a bigger team, but they managed to yoink him, and that is a massive signing for Washington. Massive. Then we see that they sign the hitscan, the DPS player Jerry from the Boston Uprising. Jerry, one of the great names of the Boston Uprising last season. He may not be one of the best hitscans in the league. He did have some very good moments though at the Boston Uprising, but we all know Jerry. He is a big name in the league. He was the biggest name on the Boston Uprising. He made a name for himself, and now he's at the Washington Justice. I don't think he's going to start a lot of the time. I don't expect him to. He's competing with the K. We have to remember that. But he is a really good DPS player, and he's going to be something that's going to be very valuable to Washington Justice during this season. They've got a lot of depth in their DPS line, which is really, really good. We've already named 3 DPS players on this roster, and there's one more to come yet as well. So I really like the depth that this Washington Justice roster's got, and I also like the balance of it. I think it's a really, really nice roster. We move on to the supports now, though. I think the supports are the weakest part of this Washington Justice roster. Not that this roster is incredibly weak, but when you compare the supports to the rest of the roster, the tank line looks really, really good. Spoiler coming up, right? If you haven't seen it already, the tank line for the Washington Justice is probably one of the best in the league. Possibly could be the best in the league, in my opinion. It's crazy. They've got stacked DPS, but the supports, can they match up to the top tier echelons of the Overwatch League? That's a very big question I have right now. Because first of all, we have the flex support. The flex support will be Bebe, coming in from the Hangzhou Spark. Now, Bebe, he's been okay for the Hangzhou Spark. He's not been anything to get excited about though. And that's what kind of, it just makes me wonder what could have been for the Washington Justice. If they'd been able to get someone like Lastro, look at Toronto Defiant, they have Lastro and Aztec, right? If they would managed to get one of them at the Washington Justice instead of Bebe, holy mother of, that would be something. But Bebe, he just seems like he'll be a stable pick, but he won't be an insane pick, right? He'll be a fairly consistent flex support. Nothing to be flashy or write home about. Whereas when you look at the other parts of the Washington Justice roster, it looks like there is something to write home about. It looks like there's some massive pop-off potential. It's just the supports. They just don't seem... They're meh, you know? But in any case, if the supports do their job consistently and enable the rest of their team, then Washington Justice are gonna be very, very good. Very, very, very good. And this is Bebe in a completely different setting. So we have to give him the benefit of the doubt, I think. It's not a bad signing. It's not an insane signing. But it's a consistent one. I'll give them that. And then the main support. The main support is definitely going to be the cool and more experienced head because they're bringing in Closer from the Dallas Fuel. So Closer is probably a weird pickup in a lot of people's eyes because, well, Closer didn't exactly have the best of times at Dallas. But Closer was on the original London Spitfire roster. He didn't stay there because he was competing against Nuss. But he is good. But again, similar thing to Bebe, he's not going to set the world alight. He's not going to set the world alight. But do you want a main support to set the world alight? How many main supports do you hear making their name in the league? You've got Moss, you've got FD God, you've got Funny Astro. There's not a huge amount. Lee J. Gon can be thrown in there as well. So there's not a huge amount of main supports that are, you know, completely standing out. So Closer, again, it's a case of the supports get their job done. And if they get their job done, that's going to be enough for the Washington Justice roster with the quality it's got in other areas. So I think that's what Washington, I think that's the road Washington have gone down. And if it is, and it works, then this will be an incredible team. But moving on from those supports, then we get an absolute clutch signing. This was incredible. When you think they signed Mag, I thought, geez, Washington are splashing a bit of cash here. But then, they walk up to your front door and say, we sign Fury on our off-tank role. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So, I think, and especially in hindsight now, it is a big tactical error of the Philadelphia Fusion to have let Fury go. And Fury finds himself at the Washington Justice now. Fury, in my opinion, is still one of the best off-tanks around. He has been insane. He was great at Philly, absolutely great at Philly, and he was insane at London Spitfire. He was probably at one point the best diva in the world, and possibly could still be the best diva in the world. Fury is an insane off-tank, and his Sigma has developed a lot, an incredible amount. So, oh boy, a tank line of Mag and Fury just sounds absolutely crazy to me. Absolutely crazy in terms of its power. And I love it. I love it. I can't wait to see Mag and Fury in action in the Overwatch League. I really, really can. Alongside each other. A Fury will also obviously be another very cool and experienced head for this roster as well. But then we have another tank coming in, actually. This is another off-tank to back up Fury. This is Rhea coming in from the Hangzhou Spark. So, Rhea I'm not expecting to be started. I think we can almost certainly say that. If he starts over Fury, I think there's something going wrong. Double off-tank meta, pretty clutch for the Washington Justice over here with Rhea and Fury. I wonder whether that might be what they're thinking about. Possibly, because we did have a double off-tank at one point when we had our Hog Zarya meta. So that's possibly what they're thinking about with this. And double main tank, Fury can do that because Fury has a good Orisa. So, and Fury actually has a decent Reinhardt. So, I think Washington Justice have covered every single angle with their tank line, and I think that's really, really valuable for them. Again, I don't think Rhea will start if it's just your normal main tank, off-tank meta, but in weird, wacky metas that can come up, especially these days in Overwatch with the way in which tanks are being messed around with, you've got to be prepared for everything in the Overwatch League. And, well, Washington Justice are exactly that. And then we see the very last signing of the Washington Justice for this 2021 season. They have signed another flex DPS player to just challenge Tuba. This is the 18-year-old, yes, again from Runaway, it is Assassin. So Assassin, I like Assassin. I like the pickup. He is, well, he's been on Runaway for a long while. He was at Geekstar before Runaway. And again, Runaway, I mean, at this point, you should all know, Runaway hang around at the top of Korean contenders. They are always there. They are always to be feared. And Assassin was a massive part of that. Alongside Mag, he's going to know him very well. And I like this. And the reason I like this, and we gloss over the supports and tanks here, because you don't want, in my opinion, and I know this from an Illusion team actually, you don't really want to mess around with your supports too much, so swapping them in and out. Houston, you should probably know that as well in previous times. But then, also, you don't want to swap your main tank too much, because your main tank tends to be a very big leadership figure in the team. So if you've got the supports and the tank never changing, you've probably got your in-game leader never changing, and you've got another game leader never changing, which is really, really good. That means you've always got a basis of a team. You've always got the core of the team never changing. It means that you've always got the same impetus, the same ideas, and it's not going to be a massive mess when someone's subbed out. However, there is still a very big argument to be made for obviously having challenge for position, and I think Washington have done this really well, with Tuba having a challenge for a position called Assassin, so they're both competing for the projectile DPS slot. Then you have Decay and Jerry. They'll both be competing for the hitscan DPS spot. So there's always another person just lurking behind you, ready to take your spot, so you have to be on the ball. You cannot become complacent because you are fighting for your place in the team constantly. Same for the off-tank role, right? Fury and Rhea. Even though we don't expect Rhea to overtake Fury at any point, it does keep Fury on his toes. It makes sure that he's always playing at his highest potential, his highest peak. And that's what I like about rosters. I like it when there is challenges that keep the roster working at its very highest level, instead of becoming complacent. And I think some teams can suffer from that sometimes. Although, you do have to have the luxury of having a bigger roster, and being able to afford that bigger roster as well. So something we should also mention as well, their coaching hasn't really changed. Supreme is still their head coach, Chilwell is still their assistant coach, but they did bring Hokiri in as a personal coach to add to that coaching staff ever so slightly when they let go of strategic coach Wiz. So they still have 3 coaches, they're still out there in the Vancouver Titans, smile. But that should be a pretty neat spot for them in terms of the amount of coaching staff they have available to them. And I think that'll be cool for the Washington Justice. But let's take a look at the first 6 matches for this team in 2021. And one thing I'm going to say, winnable. All of them. Winnable. So, first match of the season will probably be the hardest in these 6. Because Washington Justice will take on the Dallas Fuel. Now, Dallas Fuel, although they are a good team, I believe they have meta holes. And unless they fix them, which they might have, I think Washington Justice will be much better equipped. I think Washington Justice also have a better tank line. I know, controversial. Fearless and Hambin versus Mag and Fury. I actually think Mag and Fury is better. I actually really do think that. Because I think Mag and Fury honestly is one of the best tank lines in the league. But that's, what it is. Dallas, I think they may even get out DPS'd. I think that. I really do. And the elephant in the room is obviously Decay. Decay is not going to want to lose to Dallas. It's just not going to happen, and so Decay is just going to reach another level if he's played. I just believe that. I think Washington Justice will beat Dallas Fuel. I really do. It could be a little bit of a rough start for the Fuel. But Washington Justice should win that. But then, also, they can pour a lot of their resources into preparing for that Dallas Fuel match, because their second match of the season is Vancouver. Vancouver, we looked at last time out, probably the worst team in North America. So Washington Justice should not just beat Vancouver Titans, they should 3-0 the Vancouver Titans. It should not be close. This team has way too much quality for the Vancouver Titans. It's just silly. It's not going to be like last season. If this Washington Justice roster is anywhere lower than like 7th, I would be incredibly surprised, because it will have massively underachieved. Massively. And that's just lower than 7th. I really think this is easily a top 5 roster. Easily. So, then we have in the third match of the season, the Boston Uprising. That will be tougher than the Vancouver Titans, but again, Washington, Boston are worse than Dallas, probably. So, Washington should, again, fairly handily get past Boston Uprising. Boston will probably lack, especially in the tank department, compared to Washington. It just doesn't compare. Mag and Fury versus Stand 1 and Punk, or even Fusions and Punk. It doesn't compare. It just doesn't. Mag and Fury wins every single time. And yeah, Washington just have way too much quality for Boston. This, however, the fourth match of the season will be a lot closer. Probably the closest other than the Dallas one. Because this is Toronto versus Washington. So Toronto, we've looked at them rather recently. Not a bad roster. Lot of skill in it. Probably got a better support line than this Washington Justice side. I won't, beat around the bush there. If you were to hybrid this Washington Justice side with the support line of Toronto Defiant, you could have a blended Overwatch League winning roster, in my opinion. You could. But I digress. Toronto win out in probably the support line there, but in everything else, it's just Washington's game to take. It's just Washington's game to take again. So, again, I think I see Washington Justice winning that. And yeah, that would be Washington Justice going what? At least 3-1, maybe 4-0 into the main melee. Incredible. And Washington Justice will probably be one of the favourites for that. So then, in the 5th match of the season, we go into hero polls. That makes things a little bit more weird, but again, it's not going to have too much of an effect on this roster. Don't think so. Don't think so for a second. They face Paris Eternal in the 5th match of the season. That should be fairly easy. That should probably be a 3-0. However, Paris Eternal might try and force a EU rush onto them or something, depending on the hero pool, obviously. I have a sneaky feeling we might see Rhine banned. I don't know. It depends how they do hero pools, because that would be quite nice to see it done by region, but they won't do it by region. So it depends which is the more prevalent, whether it's double bubble or EU brawl. If EU brawl is quite prevalent, we could see Reinhardt banned, which will be incredibly bad for Paris. Incredibly bad. But if it's double bubble, we see Winston banned, and that means that they will probably be forced into more brawl comps, which will land into Paris's favour. However, either way, Washington should still win this, and should still win this fairly easily. Paris might take a map, but it should be pretty good for Washington this one. And then we circle all the way back round on the 6th match of the season to the Boston Uprising, and again, it should be pretty much like it was last time. Washington should sweep aside the Boston Uprising fairly easily. Because, you know, Boston are not going to want probably to run Brawl unless they're running Fusions, which I don't think they're going to all that much, to be quite honest. And so if they want to run Dive, well, Washington are going to be great at Dive. Like, they're going to be great at Dive. Why wouldn't they be? Look at their players, it's just silly. So Washington will probably very easily get past Boston Uprising once more. And that would round out a very good start to the season for the Washington Justice, their actual best start to the season ever if it goes in that way. However, you never know. Predictions happen, and you know, in all of these predictions, these are, as ever, predictions on my opinions of the players and the rosters, etc. It doesn't mean it's gonna be what happens at all. This roster could completely flop and be a massive upset for the entire season. However, it really shouldn't be. It's got way too much quality. If this roster was to flop, it would be a travesty, because it is a really good roster. However, that is it for the Washington Justice. That is it for the team previews. It's been a while. Oh boy, but now we're getting to some different content. Coming up in the next few days in the lead up to the Overwatch League season for 2021, we will be taking a look at power rankings for the East and West. And we will be taking a look at some other stuff as well before we get into our week preview for week number 1 of 2021. Oh boy, it's nice to be back. Anyway, I'm going to leave it here for this one. All the socials for Illusion Gaming and myself are linked in the video description as per usual. If you want to see any of these videos coming up, hit the bell, subscribe, and you will be notified of when these videos go live. But for now, thank you guys so much for this video. If you'd like to give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.